Hello, this is Aaron Wissner for Local Future. It is 6 o'clock here, and last week we had scheduled to have a live call with Nicole Foss. I see that there are 3 or 4 people on the line right now. Welcome. Um, as always, it's hard to tell whether Nicole is actually going to be here on time because of various different challenges with the internet and whatnot. In fact, I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to make this call earlier on account of super low bandwidth, and only after rebooting my phone and putting it on airplane mode and back was I able to finally get things in place so that it would actually work. So hopefully Nicole will be here. Her regular appointment, our regular time is 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Monday. And so for her, that is like 10 a.m. in New Zealand on Tuesday. So we'll see if she's here. Now, if you don't know who Nicole is a futurist, I would say, a big picture person, kind of an economist in her own right. She's been researching and following trends for a very long time as far as what's happening with the global economy and why things are the way they are. So it's always a pleasure to have her on the call. And until she's here, I'm just going to review some of the things that have happened since last week. So kind of like a news roundup. And for that, one of the things I like to look at, there's a couple things. One is called the Automatic Earth website. And so if you are on a computer, you're welcome to type that in. It's just called theautomaticearth.com. And this is a website which was created, I believe, by Nicole and a fellow by the name of Ilgari, I think, Raul Ilgari. And so if you go there, he'll post every day at about 6 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time a list of interesting articles. So today's interesting articles, and rather than showing these on the screen, I have the page up on my other screen here, and I'll just kind of read through the headlines that I thought were most impressive, I guess, or most interesting. And for example, here he's talking about how Finland has crushed the curve for COVID, and Hungary and Iceland a little bit easier if it's an island nation. Actually, I know Hawaii of the US was in that case. Of course, New Zealand has opened up everything internally, but they haven't opened up externally yet. So if you go to theautomaticearth.com, that is a lot of different interesting articles. There's a mention of Chris Martinson's Peak Prosperity. And Chris, if you haven't seen his Peak Prosperity YouTube channel, he talks about a lot of things going on. He makes, I think, a couple episodes a week where he's kind of explaining what's going on in the world. He has a lot of followers. Let's see, an article by Nassim Taleb talking about why masks are important. And if everyone was wearing masks when out in public, the likelihood of an increase in the transmission of the coronavirus, COVID, would be less, much less. And that's a concern in the United States, because in the United States, certain states have basically opened entirely up, and states like Florida and Texas are seeing a huge increase in the number of hospitalizations for COVID. One interesting thing, which has only come out in about, well, in the last 2 weeks or so, is actual research, and this is not in the Automatic Earth, research regarding the coronavirus as far as impacts on younger people. So I'm 50, for example. How would it impact me? Well, apparently, as far as younger people are concerned, a major pre-existing condition is being overweight, obese, fat, whatever you want to call it, carrying more than one might. You know, I don't know if there's a polite way to say that, but for people that have been hospitalized, there seems to be a pretty strong correlation between those that have a lot of difficulties after getting this COVID in their lungs and being of a higher BMI, let's just say. The reason for that in the research apparently was threefold. The number one, that just the diaphragm working the lungs and being able to breathe, it was more effort for the diaphragm. And since the lungs would be kind of compromised, while they're infected, there wasn't a whole lot of excess capacity, so to speak. You know, we're not talking about marathon runners here. We're talking about the non-marathon runners. Obviously, this is not really something polite. So perhaps that's why none of this really came out recently. And, you know, it's even uncomfortable for me to talk about. So I will just stop there and, you know, go ahead and research that yourself, you know, relationships between COVID and overweight. Primarily, the point was that it was a major pre-existing condition. A couple of the other factors were, you know, the circulatory system is already working at, you know, almost 100%. And that, now this was interesting, I don't remember which of the studies this was in, but that fat cells actually create some sort of chemical which can lead to more of that cytokine storm, which we've heard about, which can infect the lungs. But again, I'm not a physician, so, you know, don't listen to me, go look for the article. So I'm going to flip back to, and if you have questions, I see there's a few people online, go ahead and put them in there. Again, I hope Nicole will be here, but you never know. Her internet connection could be down. New Zealand could have suddenly went into a blackout or something. You know, it's hard to tell. But I will wait at least for a half an hour for her. And you are welcome to come back and watch not live later if you wish. That's perfectly fine. You know, I'm all jiggy with that. All right, let's see. In the automatic Earth, and I should bring this over here so it looks like I'm actually looking at you a little bit more. In the automatic Earth, another one of the articles is just that there's millions of jobs going to be lost in the United States, many more than people are anticipating. People are thinking they are going to go back to their jobs, and in a lot of cases, those jobs are not going to be there. In particular, one of these articles, this was from Bloomberg Economics, the source, and it was showing that approximately 4 million jobs in the United States in leisure and hospitality are likely not to return. So that is a huge chunk of jobs, a lot of people who will not be spending money, and a lot of people who are going to be concerned, and they're going to be part of that group that is, you know, super concerned about what is going on right now. And no confusion, no doubt about that. It's not a bigger surprise. So let's see, what else did we have? So that was interesting. Another one was on automobile sales. And the one on automobile sales was pointing out that in some states in the United States, automobile sales for used automobiles were declining rather rapidly. In Michigan, for example, the automobile sales were declining by, the prices for used cars were declining by like 2.5% over the past 4 months, from January to May. That's in some states, like Michigan was an example. In other states, for example, Wisconsin and Minnesota and some other places, the decline in the auto prices was more like 5%. And if you watched with our chat with Nicole in past weeks, what you'll notice is that she's mentioned that you know, people are not going to have money for automobiles, and so it's going to be very unlikely that they are going to be buying them, and that prices are going to go down. Also, something that is kind of straightforward, I think, is the idea that, you know, there's people who were waiting to buy a new vehicle all the way from February, March, April, May. They really wanted to do some test drives and do some things like that. But, you know, they're in the market now, and they may have bought something on a lease deal or whatever. They're very excited, you know, 0% down. But that kind of the demand that was kind of built up, pent-up demand, I know there's a certain term that economists use, that pent-up demand was not, is not going to last all that long. So perhaps it'll last through the summer, perhaps it'll last into the early fall, but after that, the auto sales likely to plummet. And this, again, this agrees with what Nicole has said in previous episodes. And mentioning that, if you go to previous episodes on the Local Future channel, Nicole and I have had many chats. And so if you definitely want to see Nicole, then it's unlikely you've watched all of those. So you can go there and come back, and that's fine. Hugh mentions, he's on the Facebook, he's talking about the Federal Reserve starting to buy corporate bonds. I did see that in there as well. A couple other things. Another one of the websites I look at on a daily basis is called Zero Hedge. So I'll just type that in, zerohedge.com. And zero hedge is basically for people, I think, that are trying to short the stock markets in the US and other places. And so, but the articles there are not necessarily a complete picture of what's going on in the world. A lot of times some of the articles are what a person would call far right leaning articles, but I find very, very interested stuff in there anyway. For example, the top headline is Chinese scientists escorted out of Canadian biolab sent deadly viruses to Wuhan. And then the little block quote is, "It is suspicious. It is alarming. It is potentially life-threatening." I haven't looked at that one because there's other ones that were more interesting to me. Peter Schiff has one here. Peter also, he is kind of what you would call the gold bug, but he talked about, he was one of the people along with Steve Keen and Nicole Foss and Dean Thomas and Peter Schiller, is it? Not Peter Schiller. I don't remember. Robert Schiller. They were ones who predicted the 2008 collapse of the stock market and the housing bubble burst. And they had written about it ahead of time, not just like, is this going to go up forever? There was a paper written out of Europe somewhere around 2007, 2008, 2009, which was called "Who Saw It Coming?" Did anyone see this coming? And they found like 10 economists who'd written about this. And so Peter, he doesn't necessarily have 100% of everything right all the time. He's very into, buy gold, buy these various different things, which, some people say is okay. Nicole would say, you can't eat gold. And when you have gold, when you really need it to buy something, what you need is lead more. Actually, that's Steve Keen that said that, I believe, a couple weeks ago. But as in, you might want to have a way to protect your assets, whatever they happen to be. So let's see, a couple of other headlines that kind of popped out for me. This will end in tears, quote unquote. Cooperman disses Robinhood traders, says equity valuations don't make any sense. And in a little block quote again, they are just doing stupid things. And then in bold, and in my opinion, this will end in tears, which would not be all that surprising. Now, would it? Because if they're traders who are looking at, just the day trading prices, and they're seeing like Hertz and Avis go up and up and up, they're like, oh, well, I can buy now in the morning and sell in the afternoon, and I will have made a bundle. Well, yeah, as long as everybody's doing that, sure. But at some point, prices are going to go down, and everybody who thought they were going to make a bundle, they're going to lose a bundle. I don't remember where there was an article either in Zero Hedge or Automatic Earth yesterday talking about somebody who had looked at the Robinhood account and had seen it was like negative 800,000, and they killed themselves. As far as we can tell, directly because of what they saw there. And so, there's a few people that are kind of, they're going to be unhappy. Now, the people that are happy, of course, are the ones who had the stock and things like Hertz, and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be wiped out. But then in come all these buyers who don't understand perhaps what bankruptcy is, and they buy up the stocks, and the people who are trying to get out were like, whoo, dodged a bullet on that one. And that could be pension funds, hedge funds, whoever has the stock in these corporations that are about to go bankrupt. And as I mentioned earlier, the ones likely to go bankrupt are ones that are in the retail services. I mean, a lot of those restaurants and restaurant chains. And remember, last time around in 2008, it was electronics companies. A lot of them went out of business. And I thought at that time that Best Buy was going to go out of business. It didn't. It struggled through, but in 2008 through 2010, a lot of those businesses went out of business. So Nicole's still not here. Well, I'm so sad. And she even told me that next week she's going to invite a guest on. Let me see who the guest is. What did she say? I don't remember. She said, I invited my friend Daryl Taylor to join us for a chat. He has a meeting this Tuesday now, but he's available for the next one. He's excellent on community solutions and many other topics too. He was involved in the greening of Cuba during their special period. And I've mentioned that this previous times. Excuse my reach here. So this film called The Power of Community, How Cuba Survived Peak Oil. This was, I think, early 1990s, 1991, 1992, when Cuba was only able to import stuff. And here's another one, the greening of Cuba. They were only able to import stuff from Russia because there was an embargo, and the U.S. was blocking anybody but Russia from coming into Cuba. But then the Russian USSR collapsed, and there's various reasons for that, and I'm sure Nicole would go into the details if anybody was curious. So Cuba had to rapidly grow a lot of food because they didn't have fuel for the tractors or oil for the tractors, and they didn't have parts, and so they had to grow food rapidly. And so they did what made sense to do, and that film is really interesting. Our community. I'm not sure if it's online. Let me just look. The Power of Community, How Cuba Survived Peak Oil. Well, there is a link to resilience.org. That is Richard Heinberg's, the organization he is part of. Official website for the film. I'm on the Wikipedia page. And it looks like it's available for purchase on our bookstore or digitally on Vimeo. So Vimeo, let's see. Rent for $5. Yeah, that's not bad. Pretty good film. Giving people the idea about how to grow food and how to work in a community to grow food. As Nicole and I both pointed out, it's extremely important to be making connections with your next door neighbors and building those strong relationships and friendships, because that's where security lies, not necessarily in weaponry, but in being connected to your neighbors. And for those who live not in the city and apartment buildings, where there's not so much opportunity to grow food, that's one thing. I'm double checking my Facebook to make sure Nicole's not here. I wonder if she thought it was like 10 o'clock or something. I don't think so. I need to have like a hotline to her, and I'll be able to call her and say, hey, Nicole, are you all right? Is everything okay? She also, her partner works, so it may be an issue with that. But you're still here, so I'm going to just keep prattling on. And if you have stuff that you want to put into the chat box, go ahead. You may want to come back in 15 or 20 minutes and see if Nicole made it. I don't know. It's really up to you. And again, there's lots of other stuff on this channel. If you like this channel, do a thumbs up or write a comment or like or share, whatever you like. Okay, so let's see what else is going on. Of course, there have been a lot of rallies. Another thing I like to watch on a daily basis in the United States is on YouTube. Well, there's several things on YouTube that I watch. One of them is called Amy Goodman, Democracy Now! So Amy Goodman, Democracy Now!, my understanding is this is like kind of like a publicly PBS sort of show, public broadcasting, but she does like a short news roundup. And this is the news roundup I think is listened to by many people, especially those who are very concerned about things like the murder of George Floyd and the murder of various other people, and why that's happening, and things like, what's going on in downtown Seattle with the group of people who are kind of camping out in the city center. Apparently something like that's happening in Nashville, Tennessee as well. And of course, all around the world. I mean, you guys, some of you may be in Australia, or you may be in Australia or New Zealand or the UK or Canada or Ireland. I don't know. So looks like what Amy had on today is an article about a news story, 18 minutes on the killing of Rayshard Brooks by the Atlanta police. I'm not sure if he's the one who was at the Wendy's fast food restaurant, and he was like parked in the queue to go through and get his dinner or something, and he fell asleep in the car, and nobody woke him up, but somebody called the police, and the police came, and they got him out of the car, like they pulled him out, and there was a little altercation. Allegedly, he got a hold of one of their tasers. Tasers, it kind of gives you a shock and causes you to collapse. I mean, it's quite painful, I've heard. And it can cause a person to have a heart attack. I mean, that's one of the issues with taser, but it's classified as non-lethal. Anyway, I'm not sure if it's Rayshard in this case, but the man took off, and he was shot in the back by one of the police officers. I mean, why? Why kill someone because they're running away? I mean, they're running away. All right. He was sitting in the line for the Wendy's to get his burgers, and he fell asleep. So yeah, a lot of people were very upset, and the people in the Atlanta, which has a large minority Black population, they went to the Wendy's, and one of them, or two of them, I don't know, one of them out of many, burned the place down. So apparently there's just a smoldering ruin, and the police officers who killed the man are now resigned or on administrative leave, and there's going to be, lawsuit and whatnot. So yeah, so that's not very exciting. I mean, that's driving this anger, in the U.S. So there's a lot going on. So let's see. Police anti-bias trainer shot in groin by San Jose cops at protest. Quote, it's clear this isn't working. Another article by Amy. He wanted to hurt me. New York protester hospitalized after New York officer shoved her to the ground. And this looks like a woman of color, kind of, maybe. I don't want to take a guess there. Mary Hook. Policing is inherently rotten and must be dismantled. Black Mecca, the class disparity between Atlanta's Black politicians and their constituents. So kind of interesting to watch, to see, if you're interested in what's going on with the people who are upset and out in the cities. And it's not just in the US. There was a big gathering in London. I can't remember if there was one in Paris this past weekend, but there's been gatherings in many places, yes. And there's questions about when is the lockdown going to open? So, for example, I live in Michigan, not far from Canada. I'm curious, when is that border going to open? One of the articles from, I think the Washington Post or something said, well, the border might open on, well, it's scheduled to open on like the 21st of June or something, but probably won't. Might be, a month or two later, or maybe just not in 2020 at all. So, I mean, that's a big difference, and there's an article somewhere, I don't remember where it was, talking about which countries are going to open sooner and which are going to open later. Well, the ones that have tourism are really rely on tourism. They want to open faster. So I remember Egypt and Greece and let's see, some of the Caribbean islands really wanted to open right away, get people come to them. So yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, I don't know if Nicole's going to show up. So I apologize for anybody who came looking for Nicole. Hopefully she'll show up. Let me check my Facebook again and my email. Nothing from email. Check my Facebook. Nope, she hasn't even read the messages I sent her earlier, so I don't know where she is. Well, it could have been a schedule. Is it Monday? I think it's Monday. It feels like Monday. It's the 15th, so it should be Tuesday for her. All right. Again, questions, go ahead and put questions if you want me to respond to something. I said John says hello. Hi, John. Nice to see you. Let's see. What else do I look at? I actually like on YouTube looking at some of the stuff. George Carlin, I was looking at yesterday. I was driving back from my parents' house, and just it's interesting because he, even though he's died years ago, he had a lot of interesting insights on what's going on in the world and how the economy is not really, the government doesn't really do what the people want. And I don't remember if it was he or somebody else, but they were talking about, somebody was talking about how in the United States democracy is getting less and less, because in the House of Representatives here in the U.S., we have, I believe, 435 representatives. And so the idea is you take the 300 million people, 350 million people who live in the U.S., and you divide them equally. Well, to each state, you designate a certain number of representatives. And then you in Michigan, for example, you carve up Michigan into these little representative districts. I think we have 16 or 17 of them. And then each one is supposed to have an equal number of people in it. So in the districts in Michigan have approximately, I don't know, 700,000 people each. But the point of this article was that as the United States population grows and grows, the number of people assigned to each representative gets more and more. So it becomes less and less, democracy becomes less and less available. Hey, there's something related to this which I'd like to share. So here in the US, we have this election coming up. In my particular district for US representative, we're supposed to vote for the Democrat or the Republican candidate who will later be on the ballot for the general election in November. We're supposed to vote coming up in August. And so I've got a couple of these flyers, and I'll hold them up, and then I'll read them, because obviously if anybody's listening to the podcast. So I've got a couple of these flyers in the mail, and I'm curious if this is happening around the US and other countries as well. So if you want to chime in on this. So this is called, and if you're not aware, the district that I'm in, Justin Amash is the current representative. He thought he was going to maybe run for president as a libertarian, but then realized, well, no, it's too late. That was a couple months ago. He left the Republican Party after he voted to impeach Donald Trump, back about a year ago. And so he's more of a centrist libertarian. It's really hard to tell exactly where he is. I'm pretty sure he's very pro-life, but he's also pro-liberty. So it's kind of interesting. He wants to put in, he's one of the people who's endorsing this bill to no longer protect the police when they kill someone. You know, that they are subject to prosecution just the same as everybody else. Anyway, so there's this person who is running for the Republican position now, since Justin is not a Republican. He's not running for that Republican. There's got to be somebody in that seat. And so it says conservative veteran Peter Meyer for Congress. I'll do my voice here. Meyer, by the way, is this huge supermarket where it has like a grocery on one side and then it has like a Walmart on the other end. I mean, it's huge. It's larger than Walmart. It's more open than it's nice. It's really nice. And it's a privately owned corporation centered in Michigan, and there's like 200 of these stores that are kind of spread out around the Great Lakes area. And so just the fact that his name, this person's name is Meyer. I've never heard of this person before, but so these are the candidates that may be all over the U.S. And if you're a Trump supporter, then maybe you're aware of these people already. I don't know. Conservative veteran Peter Meyer for Congress. Defending our country. Peter Meyer served our country in the U.S. Army Reserves. So he wasn't in the Army. He was in the reserves. So you have to go overseas for a couple of years or something. You have to go 1 weekend a month and a week a year or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the deal is. Peter Meyer served our country in the U.S. Army Reserves, where he fought terrorists in Iraq to keep Americans safe. Now he's on a mission to defend our liberty when our economy and our rights are under attack. Defending our values, Peter is 100% pro-life and will always defend the lives of the unborn. Even though in the U.S. abortion is legal, as a Roe versus Wade case back in the 1970s, and so it's legal. He opposes giving any federal funding to abortion providers and will stand up to protect our religious liberty. Now, just as a point of privilege, you know, I don't love the idea of abortions either, but it's not up to me. It's the mother who makes that decision. So there we go on that. Defending our freedom. Peter proudly supports the Second Amendment and will oppose any attempt to infringe on our rights. He will rein in big government so our local communities can grow and flourish. So Second Amendment in the US is just the right to bear arms. More or less, there's a little more about a militia or something in there. But the idea of just being able to have a gun. Well, in the US, as far as I know, none of the mainstream politicians are saying anything about taking away anybody's guns. Not that I know of. For example, Bernie Sanders, he's from Vermont and he's all pro-gun. I mean, he's like, yeah, go hunt, you know, get your gun. And Joe Biden, I've not heard him say anything about you can't have a gun. So, although that's the common understanding in the U.S. that the Democrats they're going to come and take your guns. Defending our families and workers. Peter knows that we can get America working again and hold China accountable to empower our families, small businesses, and workers. Peter will work tirelessly to rebuild our economy, cut regulations, and get our country moving forward. Endorsed by President Trump's strongest allies, the House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, House Republican Whip Steve Scalise, Congressman Dan Crenshaw, Senator Tom Cotton. Vote Peter Meyer, Congress 2020. All right, so I could read more about that to you, but if Nicole watches this, she can be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's doesn't sound like a great plan there. But I have many Facebook friends that are very in favor of having that type of candidate. Now, notice he never mentions that he's been on a school board, elected to a school board, a township board, village council, nonprofit board. As far as I can tell, I mean, he doesn't mention anything as far as leadership. And so he's going to go from not representing anyone, as far as I can tell, to representing myself along with 700,000, 800,000 other people in Michigan. Yeah. So questions. Fred says, hi, Aaron. If you talk to Nicole today, can you ever elaborate on this? If you work for the federal government, should you worry about your TSP or your federal pension, which is called FERS? Thanks. Oh, that's a good question. You know, my guess would be that would be the last one that a person should worry about. I would think that anybody who has a corporate pension, they're going to worry about that first. Anybody who has a municipal pension, like a city, especially certain cities like in Illinois, for example, they should worry about that next. State pensions, any state that has pensions, I think that would be the next one, especially if the state is running out of money right now. I think New York State mentioned that they were billions behind already for this year on account of so much spending and so little revenue coming in. So yeah, so pensions, I'm a pensioner myself, so I don't know how long the pensions will continue. Will it be another year, 10 years, 20 years? I don't know. That's a good question. But I would guess that federal pensions would be the last ones that would be an issue. That would just be my guess. I'm sure Nicole would love to analyze that. Okay, let's see what else. Zero hedge, back to zero hedge. I know there's some other interesting ones in there. The cowboy state is hurting as low oil prices persist. So Texas, yep. U.S. Surgeon General flip-flops from stop buying masks to claiming masks promote freedom. Well, yeah, if you're wearing a mask, you can go pretty much anywhere. In Michigan, it's very strange because depending on where you are in Michigan, some people wear masks, some people don't wear masks. So I was at my parents' house, nobody was wearing masks there, in the grocery store or anywhere. But where did we go? I went to a gas station yesterday. Everybody was wearing masks going into the gas station. Every single person was wearing a mask. So part of that's because Michigan is like divided into these 8 regions, and Region 8, which is where the Upper Peninsula, and then Region 6, where my parents live, is almost not under lockdown. Region 1 would be Detroit area, and that's like still on the higher level of lockdown. So it's kind of interesting. Not every state's doing that in the US. Let's go on to next. Neil, fourth turning how? Our system is near the breaking point. So the fourth turning, I've heard of this several times. Apparently it's a book. I've not read it. But the idea is that there's going to be major political change, and he doesn't say exactly what it is, but just that, you know, when things get to be this unequal between the rich and the poor, that major things happen, I think, is the upshot of that. Okay. Another major news item this weekend: major military search underway after US F-15 jet crashes in North Sea. Supreme Court rules American workers cannot be fired for being gay or transgender, defying the White House. This was interesting because the Supreme Court of the US ruled like in like a 6-3 decision. I think there's 9 Supreme Court justices. And so it wasn't just like, you know, 5-4, but it was 6-3. So that's a bigger deal. Let's see. Bankrupt Hertz warns buyers they'll need a miracle to avoid total loss as bonds value equity at -2 billion. Yes. White woman filmed setting fire to Atlanta Wendy's after latest police killing. Oh, so it was a white woman who came and set fire to that Wendy's. Look at the white girl trying to set on fire. Look at that white girl trying to burn down a Wendy's. So, interesting. Okay, let's see. I'm afraid Nicole's not going to make it today. Aaron, it says, here's a YouTube video about 10 minutes by Neil Howe explaining the fourth turning. Thank you very much, Fred. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to have to change the title of this video because it's not going to be Nicole Foss and Aaron Wissner. It's going to have to be Aaron Wissner rambles on about the news and what's going on. All right, is there anything else I really want to look at right now? What else have I been interested in recently? Yeah, that's the big stuff. Let's look at CNN just to see, or actually let's go to Facebook. Facebook, I have some friends who they are really good at picking out news items. They are so good. And so let me type one of them in here and see what she put in for today. Actually, let me just go down through my Facebook feed and see what's on there. That's kind of fun. Because I haven't opened my Facebook in a few days. I actually have it locked down almost all the time. And so if you're on my Facebook and you're like, where did Aaron go? Well, I have it like frozen almost all the time. But Biden lands Planned Parenthood endorsement in U.S. presidential race. Well, probably wasn't going to be Trump. No big surprise there. SAP online customer event off to a rocky start as site crashes. Sapphire now. Reuters. I don't know what that is. Let's see what else Reuters says. The world's biggest exclusive, BlackRock injects 18 billion into European financial markets, I guess it says. Now, this is something I was reading about BlackRock the other day. Maybe it was with Ellen Brown, who is with the Public Banking Institute. She has a video. She was talking with someone on YouTube, which I watched yesterday, 2 days ago. And she was talking about how BlackRock really has control, seems to have control of a lot of the central banks, which is really interesting. I didn't know that. BlackRock also has, U.S. connections. I can't remember if it has Michigan connections or not, but it says, Reuters says the world's biggest asset manager, BlackRock, has pumped about 16 billion euros, 18 billion US dollars, into 810 European companies since the end of January, more than half of them in distress due to the coronavirus pandemic. A source with direct knowledge of the matter told Reuters. So in other words, some people of these companies are getting rich. Fed will begin purchasing corporate bonds on Tuesday. The Federal Reserve said it will start purchasing corporate bonds on Tuesday through the secondary market, Corporate Credit Facility, SMCCF, one of the several emergency faculties recently launched by the U.S. Central Bank to improve market functioning in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Well, I think the only thing they haven't yet purchased at this point seems to be stocks themselves. It would make more sense to me just to buy the companies themselves. I mean, why not just buy one of these companies and then the government would own it and then they could sell it later or do whatever they want with it, I guess. Taxi driver turns hearse driver as coronavirus cases in India spike. Yes. Before the novel coronavirus brought its pandemic to New Delhi, Amir was one of tens of thousands of people making a living in the Indian capital as a taxi driver. Now his days are spent transporting corpses from the hospital to cremation pyres and cemeteries, sometimes stacked on top of each other 6 at a time. Their names written in permanent marker on their burial shrouds. Well, that's not pleasant news, is it? Reuters, mutation in new coronavirus increases chance of infection. Not surprising. I was talking with my wife about that the other day. So if a person has the coronavirus in them and their body's fighting it off and it has these antibodies and the antibodies destroy and eat up most of this coronavirus, but there's a mutation so that the antibodies do not attach. So the white blood cells or macrophages, whatever they're called, can't come and attack that one. Well, that's the one that's still going to be in the system and get breathed out. So these little mutations are going to make it more and more and more virulent, less able to be attacked by the body's immune system. Reuters, UN writes body to examine systemic U.S. racism and police brutality. Now remember, the UN is located in New York City, the UN building. The UN Human Rights Council will hold an urgent debate on allegations of systemic racism, police brutality, and violence against peaceful protests in the United States. That part I don't understand. You know, when you have a bunch of young people going to a city center and they're all hyped up, you know, they're excited. It's like at a football game. I mean, they get excited, they throw things. You know, the whole idea is the police come and, you know, just make sure everybody's safe and nobody's hurting anybody else and don't need to bring guns or anything like that. Reminds me of the march that I was in Toronto back in August, and this was for all the women who, you know, are very loving and they don't want to see any of the animals hurt or anything. So they had this huge march with 5,000 people or something, and the police were like right there. They were just on the sides. They were just watching all the women. I mean, it wasn't all women. It was mostly women, like 2/3 women. Mostly younger women, but there's older women as well. But the police were just like helpful, and they're like, okay, you know, just. So in the U.S., it's like almost the opposite of that, I'm afraid, in some places, but not everywhere. Obviously, not everywhere. Atlanta police shooting of black man was a homicide, coroner says. The death of Rayshard Brooks, a black man killed by a white police officer in Atlanta, was a homicide caused by gunshot wounds to the back, coroner said. Don't shoot people in the back. I mean, geez. How? That's just... All right. That's not what we do. A picture and its story, black man carries suspected far-right protester to safety. And the image shows this black man who has a black hat on and black clothes, muscular, burly, carrying a white bald man who looks freaked out. So I want to read that one. That one looks interesting. Record spikes in new coronavirus cases, hospitalization sweep parts of U.S. Yes, we talked about that already. U.S. Embassy in Seoul displays Black Lives Matter banner in support of anti-racism protests. In London, skirmishes, suspected far-right protester is rescued. Let's see, Reuters still. Italy, Germany, France, Netherlands signed contract with AstraZeneca for COVID vaccine. I have to say, I am not super excited about taking a vaccine that has been rushed to market that quickly. I will just let other people take that first, see how it goes. Let's adopt a wait and see mentality on that. I'm okay wearing my mask for a while. Reuters, New York Cuomo defends Columbus statues for symbolism to Italian Americans. New York should keep statues honoring Christopher Columbus, even though the brutalization of the West Indies inhabitants he encountered on his voyages to the New World is inexcusable, Governor Andrew Cuomo said on Thursday. So I tried listening to this audiobook by Howard Zinn, I think, The History of America. Was it Howard Zinn? And The People's History. Let me see what it says. And one of the chapters is about the Colombian incursion. Let's see, Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn, A People's History to the United States. Yeah, so it's called A People's History of the United States. So this is all, instead of the history of the elected leaders and the corporations, it's the history like the regular everyday people, like the slaves and the poor people and the women and the Native Americans or Indians, whatever we would like to call them. Okay, let's see. I got a couple posts from a friend, another post from a friend. Parenting done right. If you aren't teaching your kids how to form a shield wall, are you really a good parent? Yeah, I'm sometimes I wonder, what would make a good parent. The Flamingo Lips use giant bubbles to keep crowds safe during the Late Show concert. Don't know what that is. Defund the police state by community change action advertisement. So this is from one of my, what I would call a right side friend, from secondamendmentdaily.com. America has added 2 million first-time gun owners in 5 months, including 800,000 women. And that one has 27 likes. So apparently some people in the US are very excited about gun ownership going up. Okay, this is by a couple friends. Independent.co.uk. Trump dismisses uptick in coronavirus cases and suggests a stop to testing. And so my friend mentions, yes, let's stop testing. That seems like a rational response. While we are at it, why are we even still talking about this virus? I'm pretty sure it feeds on the attention. And if we ignore it, we should see it just go away. Supreme Court rules existing civil rights law protects gay and lesbian workers. Yep, we already did that one. Israel approves funding for new Trump Heights settlement. NBCnews.com, Trump Heights. And there's a sign that says Trump Heights, and it has an Israeli flag and a US flag kind of crossed. Settlement expresses gratitude to Donald Trump for his work. And a lot of the people who responded to this are using the vomit emoticon. So Hunter-Gatherers and the Mythology of the Market, John Gowdy by libcom.org. I'm not going to read that whole thing, but that one looks interesting. I would read that one later. Okay, here's another one from my right side friend. Quote from LeBron James, he's a football player. The NFL got a bunch of old white men owning teams, and they got that slave mentality. And then there's a young African-American woman looking at this one. It says, your shoes are made by Indonesian factory workers for 50 cents an hour. You get $1 billion for it. Why not make them here in the United States? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up here in about 10 minutes because Nicole's not here. Maybe she'll show up. Maybe she'll show up at 7 o'clock and say it was an hour late. But so I'll stick around till then. Associated Press. Justices rule LGBT people protected from job discrimination. Got that grim blame game over virus deaths in besieged nursing homes. Yes. So the nursing homes, actually, my wife was talking about one of her friends who works in a nursing home. She's a physical therapist, but the techs that go into the nursing homes are not wearing masks in Michigan. And of course, the people who are in nursing homes, they're the ones who, they don't have a lot of extra capacity if they get sick. I mean, they don't do well once they get this virus. So I would expect to see a lot more deaths out of nursing homes in the near future, along with other people that have pre-existing conditions or who have a higher BMI, body mass index. So this one says, this is from 10 hours ago, nursing home residents represent a tiny slice of the US population, but a shockingly high proportion of Americans who have died in the coronavirus pandemic. A grim blame game with partisan overtones is breaking out over those COVID deaths. 6 more posts from AP. Pandemic leads to bicycle boom and shortage. Well, I certainly would like my bikes to be working better. US-based namesakes include slaveholders, failed generals, for example, Fort Hood. So in the US, one of the things that is being suggested by the people who are assembling in the cities, especially, is that the military bases no longer be named after racist people and people who were part of the Confederacy. Now, the Confederacy, I think that's a little bit more complicated than just slave versus non-slave, but I mean, there are money things that were going on and economic things. Not to say that that wasn't part of it. I just don't know if that was the entire thing. Atlanta police chief resigns after that fatal police shooting, and she appears to be a 50-year-old white woman, as far as I can tell. It is time for the city to move forward and build trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve, Atlanta's departing police chief says. Floyd death sparks effort to hold more officers accountable. Mississippi faces reckoning on Confederate emblem in flag. I hadn't thought of that. That could be an issue if their flag actually has a Confederate emblem. At West Point, Trump stresses unity, nation's core values. President Trump's commencement speech to West Point's graduating class highlighted the diversity of America's newest officers defending the nation's core principles. Trump emphasized unity at a time when his relationship with military leaders is strained. The military leaders have been saying, stop saying racist things, basically. All right. Any other comments in there? No. Well, thank you for hanging out with me. I'll do just a few more minutes. If you have questions for me, obviously put them in there. I apologize that I didn't have a better plan with Nicole. I will double and triple check next week to make sure that she's on the line at the right time. Here we go, BBC News. Uganda's rare silverback mountain gorilla killed. That's sad. I have a friend in Uganda that I actually donated money to today so that he could help grow a permaculture garden. I sent him $25 via MoneyGram. He was very thankful. I sent him $25 last week. I said, okay, I'm going to send you $50 altogether, 25 last week, 25 this week. And he was able to buy some seeds and things, maybe some tools, so that he could start this garden with his community. I think it's with his community. Quote, the death of Rafiki leaves the group of mountain gorillas unstable. It has no leadership, and it could be taken over by a wild silverback. That's an article I would read. Okay. AFP News Agency. Now, I don't know what AFP News Agency is, but it's one of the largest in the world. Black Lives Matter. We are done dying. Protesters march on Georgia Capitol. Elderly patients in nursing home in Sao Paulo, Brazil, right, can hug their loved ones through a plastic hug curtain, a way to bring families together amid the pandemic that is ravaging Brazil, with over 41,000 deaths and more than 800,000 cases. In Delhi, coronavirus fears mount as hospital beds run out. Reminds me of Yemen. Apparently Yemen, the number of doctors that have died from the coronavirus is like 30 or 40 doctors. I can't imagine that there's a whole lot of doctors in Yemen to start with. I mean, Yemen has been in a bad shape. Civil war and, you know, other countries coming in and trying to fund the various sides, and very frustrating. Fresh world protests against racism and police violence, Egypt independent. Thousands marched in cities around the world for a second week of rallies to support the US Black Lives Matter movement, but also to highlight racism and police brutality in their own countries. Second wave fears rise in China, reports highest virus tally in months. So apparently in China, in the capital Beijing, they're starting to have an outbreak. And so they're starting to lock down, kind of like they did in Wuhan. And so that's something to keep an eye on as well. Will that lead to another global kind of shutdown? You know, what is that? What is the future for that? Would people even accept a shutdown at this point? Or would they say, I guess we're just going to get sick, and if we have people in our family who are high risk, then they're going to get sick as well. Myself, I'm happy just hanging out for a long time without, you know, worrying about that. Okay. 4 more minutes. We'll just see 5 more minutes, and we'll see if Nicole's going to make it for 7 o'clock. Otherwise, I'm going to say adieu, goodbye. Reading the headlines might not be that exciting. So let me slip down and see if there's anything else that let's see what one of my friends, let's see, what's her name? Indianapolis Council unanimously declares racism a public health crisis. Pride Month and Black Lives Matter join forces at New York City's Stonewall Inn this week. Rawstory.com, we can't see any way his visit will be good for the city. Largest Tulsa newspaper says Trump not welcome. So apparently he is going to Tulsa to do his first rally, and he was going to do it on Juneteenth Day, which is the 19th of June, which has a significance for African American, Black people in the US. I think he pushed it back one day to June 20th, right? Trump crashes and burns in swing states as Biden leads by 17. The Navajo Nation now has more COVID deaths than 7 states combined. That's from Robert Reich. Rush Limbaugh calls on people with guns to push back on the left. Rush Limbaugh is this kind of this ultra-right radio announcer, commentator in the US. Top Voice of America editors resign amid strife with White House. Arrival of new Trump-appointed director. Voice of America. So Voice of America is a radio show which is supposed to be spread all over the world. People can listen all over the world in English and other languages as well, I think. And the idea is that it's kind of spreading democracy all around the world. So that's kind of interesting. New Zealand's prime minister may be the most effective leader on the planet. It helps to have an island nation, but she is very charismatic and she seems very approachable. Whenever Jacinda's videos will pop up on my Facebook, I'm like, she's just very casual, and she's talking to you as if she's just talking to you, like as if she's having a conversation, and you know, you're just listening. Ripple effects of downturn show pandemic's early economic toll was just the beginning. Tens of thousands dress in white for emotionally charged peaceful protests in solidarity with Black trans people. I'm guessing this was the New York City one. Pinknews.co.uk. Oh, maybe it was in the UK. It's time to create a national registry of police misconduct. Samuel Jackson image, and it says people complaining about rioting, but forgot that the KKK used to burn down black houses and churches. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. It's 7 o'clock here. I'll probably get a text message from Nicole later tonight. She'll be like, oh, well, I thought we were going to do 10 p.m. your time and 2 p.m. our time. Well, so maybe we'll be on live later. And if so, I will let you know. Thank you so much for joining. And again, next week, I'm 99% sure Nicole will be here because she said there's going to be her friend. I invited my friend, Daryl Taylor, to join us for a chat. He has a meeting this Tuesday today, but he's available for the next one. He's an excellent on community solutions and many other topics too. He was involved in the greening of Cuba during their special period. Thank you so much for watching Aaron's blabbering show on news headlines for, let's see, Monday, June the 15th, 2020. Thank you for all you're doing to help your neighbors and community, trying to share your gifts as they might be. If you have found this in any way useful, please hit like and subscribe and put a comment in and share it with others. And thanks for joining. You never know what you're going to see on this channel. Bye-bye.